Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Reign of Troy Radio. This is the Carcast after USC's 42-25 win over the Arizona State Sun Devils at the Coliseum. We're going to talk all about it, and we want to hear your thoughts here live on YouTube as well. As always, you can follow us on social media. My co-host, Alicia Artola, is at Penguin of Troy. I'm at Michael Cast FS. You can follow the site at Reign of Troy. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Reign of Troy. Be sure to subscribe to us wherever you can find your podcasts. And we are here on YouTube as well. Reign of Troy Radio live after every game with a Carcast. We are on, and the mic is on. If you're joining us on YouTube, it was a bit of a slow start because, Alicia, there's an order of operations in which you press the buttons. The key is to press the countdown little video and then hit live, not hit live and then press the countdown button. But, you know.
Yeah, so
things happen.
So the fans that were already tuning in on YouTube got to see me staring at my phone and you doing whatever you were doing.
Yeah.
Off to a slow start tonight.
Hey, just like USC's defense, right? But alas, USC came together and got the win 42-25 over ASU at the Coliseum. If you're joining us in live over on YouTube, we put up a poll. How are you guys feeling about the game so far? Did you love it? Mad, did it still need some work, or are you frustrated? 69% of the Rotbots coming in so far and saying, meh, still need work. 17% frustrated, and only 14% say that they loved it. Alicia, what are your first thoughts about Saturday night's game for USC as they go to 5-0?
I thought this game was very telling. I think that this is sort of the prototypical game that I would expect from USC this season, would have expected in the earlier games, and I will expect to see more games like this going forward. This is the sort of DNA of this team. It is the offense, smooth as silk when they're smooth as silk, not always going to be smooth as silk. And the defense is going to have a really rough time giving up a lot of yards in the first half. And if they don't get turnovers, they will give up points. And then suddenly in the second half, they'll just figure it out and start getting pressure on the quarterback and start creating havoc and doing, the things that causes this defense to suddenly look like they do have a pulse. And that's sort of USC's second half defense. And so you're going to end up with score lines and games that are going to play out very similar to this, which is 42-25. So scoring 40 points, checked one of my boxes, feel good about the offense. Giving up 25 points, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm happy about giving up 25 points, but as I've said this whole time, if you could promise me this defense would hold everybody to 25 points, I would be perfectly content. Like, I think that this defensive performance is the reality of what this defense is, and you can choose to focus on the first half if you want to. I think this is a glass half full, glass half empty situation where those who want to focus on the first half and all of the deficiencies can certainly do that and can be right to do so. And those who want to focus on the second half adjustments and the way they fight and the way they do find a way to create havoc and turnovers and get pressure on the quarterback and, get 5 sacks in a game and all of that kind of stuff that makes sure that a game like this doesn't turn out to be a nervous sort of game.
Mm-hmm.
Then people can focus on that and also be right to focus on that. So I think that what you take from this is this team is still very vulnerable, I think, on offense and defense to tougher challenges that may come as the season goes.
Yeah.
But having watched a full day of college football action, the credit I will give this team right now is that I watched a lot of teams have games like this turn into one possession games, turn into you have to get a stop or you will give up the lead kind of games. And USC never let it quite get there. Got a little bit nervous with the onside kick. But even that, it was still a 2 possession game. So yeah, middle of the road, I would say. I think this is not a rah, yes, everything's going well performance. And it's not also a the sky is falling and everything's terrible kind of performance.
Yeah, I look at this one of two ways. You talk about the defense and how you can focus on the first half or the second half. I think the second half is the bigger story for the reason of it's always how you adjust. If they would have started the first half and ASU would have had like no yardage in the first half, and then suddenly in the second half they just carved SC up, that's a problem because that shows that something happened in the middle of the game and you didn't know how to. ASU made an adjustment and you couldn't counter it. This tells a different story. And in game 5 of year 1, I'm going to take a defense that has a first half that is shaky if it's going to be followed by halftime adjustments, which I think were evident when you see all the pressure that they got in the second half. Emory Jones could do no wrong in the first half. In the second half, he was under duress on every single play, it felt like. They were constantly in the backfield. That forced errant throws. That made him to make decisions. That took away his running lanes. It did all of those things. You saw the adjustments from Alex Grinch, and it paid off in the game because ASU wasn't able to do anything in the second half, with the exception of that very weird fluke drive that has the third down conversion that should have been intercepted by Damani Jackson that was tipped up and caught, followed by 2 questionable at best pass interference calls. That drive, if that drive doesn't happen, SC wins this game 42-17. If that drive doesn't happen and Caleb Williams doesn't throw an awful pass for his first interception of the year, it's just 49-17, right? And it's the same game that plays out. So the way I look at it, the score 42-25, not amazing. Certainly, it's not what you could have dreamed of, right? In the sense of you want a team to, put your foot on their neck and throttle them throughout and all that stuff. But that's basically what SC did, just without the wow factor, because you had the interception, you had that weird drive, and I don't put too much stock in any of those things because SC made everything else pay off. It wasn't the most efficient game possible. Caleb Williams made a lot of questionable decisions, but he paid them off by having insane plays that worked.
He was Supermaning in this game.
Yes, and that's not always going to work, but man, when it works, it's so beautiful to watch and super fun to watch. You take this win any day of the week. Yes, there's problem areas on offense. I think they could be a little bit more explosive, especially in the vertical passing game. I still need to see more of that. SC still struggling to put that together. The one long ball that we saw was called back for a holding call that could have been hold on either
multiple
of the tackles.
Holding calls, yeah,
and it was called on Cortland Ford at left tackle. But yeah, it is what it is. I think the defense ramping up in the second half, to me, is the biggest takeaway, that they showed that once again they can get the stops when you need them. Very similar to the Stanford game where they got mauled in the first half. In the second half, they really kind of hunkered down a little bit. And didn't need turnovers to do it this time. And I thought that was a takeaway too, without the takeaway until they got one in garbage time.
Yeah, I mean, in that way, I agree. It was very much like the Stanford game. It also had a little bit of a flair of the Oregon State game in the sense of when the one or two moments when it was like, well, ASU can actually take a lead here.
Mm-hmm.
They got the stop, and it was pretty a routine stop too. Like they pretty much just went out there and got it done. So that's good to see from them. It's like I am very encouraged by that. I am on the record as saying that this defense is what it is. There is no savior coming down the line. Unless you talk about guys like Damani Jackson and Corey Foreman, and both of those guys were out there today. Corey Foreman is getting pressure on the quarterback. One of these days, he's going to finish those pressures and be a really, really high impact player in the pass rush. Not quite there yet, but you can sort of see signs that when he's allowed to get on the field, you can see why he's such a highly sort of touted prospect. But this is what the defense is, and they're going to have to work with what they have, and they are working with what they have. And so I think that is something that I'm just sort of willing to ride with. I think the big concern coming out of this game for me is not the defense at all. Like, again, the defense is going to be what they're going to be, and I can live with this 17 to 25 point defense. In fact, I'm perfectly happy with it. The offensive line is a worry. We talk about
It's a
not
worry
being
that for me came out of nowhere, kind of.
Yeah, well, because it felt like the offensive line was so steady.
Mhm.
Now, did it come out of nowhere? Because the last 2 weeks, the offensive line has been real bad, and the last 2 weeks they've been dealing.
It's 3.
The last 3 weeks, that's fair, but they've been dealing with the injury sort of bug a little bit more. They've had to shuffle a little bit more. Gino Quinones comes in and starts for Justin Dedich. As far as we know, it's because of an injury. He'd been dealing with it last week. It was bothering him last week too. So we knew that this offensive line didn't have good depth, and now they've been hit with some injuries. Bobby Haskins and Cortland Ford are both playing, but playing through injury to a point. Dedich wasn't in there. That's a reality, and I think we're seeing its impact on this offense, because how can you be explosive if Caleb Williams is having to bail out of the pocket immediately because guys are getting through? How can you set up long plays if Caleb Williams doesn't have time to do that? And every time he has those opportunities, it's on the run, throwing across his body, making those incredible plays, trying to avoid pressure. So the offensive line to me is very much the sort of core problem going on here. We saw Caleb Williams in this game. The accuracy issues were gone. He looked right back to normal. Last week was an aberration, just as I thought it would. I thought it was. He was absolutely slinging it, accurate, composed.
Slinging it, that's one way to put it.
Yeah, well, maybe a little bit too much, because like that jump pass, that ridiculous jump pass that he completes to Jordan Addison is probably a pick six 9 times out of 10.
First of all, it's a safety. Anybody else, that's a safety.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's potentially a if anyone gets sacked at that point, who knows? Maybe you fumbled the ball too, but should have been a pick. If anything, an errant throw that it's right on the money and moves the ball downfield is insane.
Yeah.
Insanity.
I mean, I think we saw what makes Caleb Williams special in this game.
Absolutely.
And I think we also saw, a little bit of every athlete who is special, who has that sort of flair. You're going to get the good and the bad with them sometimes. Like sometimes the flair is going to be too much, and they're going to trust, throwing up a fade in double coverage, not noticing a safety in the end zone, and just sort of giving away a possession, giving away a red zone possession. So that's something that you're going to get. But Caleb Williams is the player he is because he can make those kinds of crazy plays, because he can be Superman. So I think you ride with it and you enjoy it and you see how it goes, because more often than not, he's in the right. The problem right now is just that USC is asking him to do that too much. USC is playing with fire, having him run as often as he's had to run. These aren't designed runs. He's escaping pressure. And ASU is not the team that you highlight as the most dangerous pass rushing team, havoc creating team that USC has left on this schedule. Washington State is gonna be an interesting team to face, given these struggles on the offensive line. And I can tell you now, I mean, you and I have said from the beginning that USC would lose to Utah in Salt Lake City. An offensive line that is playing the way that this current unit is playing, Caleb Williams will be lucky to make it through that entire game healthy. That's my big red flag fear right now, because Utah doesn't let the quarterback get away the way that ASU let the quarterback get away today. And that is going to be something that USC really has to hunker down and sort out if they want to come out with a win in a couple of weeks. But also, this game is another reminder that like this is a good team, but it's not a great team. And there are limitations that are going to cause them to get into trouble sometimes. And they have incredible talent to get out of that trouble, but they're going to still get into that trouble, as evidenced by everything that happened tonight. So, you just gotta roll with the punches to a certain point, and you have to see what is the continuing character of this team. Because one of the things that I've really enjoyed about these 5 wins so far is that they have showed really incredible character, really positive character.
Yeah.
That you have seen the defense respond, even though they've given up so much. You have seen the offense respond.
You haven't seen it all go to hell at the same time, right?
No.
Like,
and on a day when I can tell you around college football, it went to hell all at the same time for a lot of teams. And a lot of them didn't get out of Dodge. So, like...
Yeah. Well, you talk about Utah. I just pulled up the game book. Utah, if you've been living under a rock, big winners today over Oregon State, 42-16. Chance Nolan, Oregon State's quarterback, gets hurt in that game. You said
after throwing 2 interceptions.
Well, you said that Utah is not going to let SC off the hook, and they're going to get after the Caleb Williams and the sacks and all that stuff. I just want to throw these numbers out there because it's mind-boggling to me. Oregon State, I didn't watch the game for what it's worth, so these are just the stats in the stat book. 171 rushing yards, they outrushed Utah. 246 passing yards, they outpassed Utah. And they gave up 0 sacks. And
they gave up 0 sacks?
0 sacks, and they lost 42-16. Why? Because they committed turnovers.
Yes.
USC doesn't commit turnovers.
Yeah, 4 turnovers. One of them was
They committed one in this game against ASU, and we'll talk about that at some point here. Talking about Caleb Williams some more.
USC flirts with giving him turnovers.
Well, Caleb Williams, okay. Let's talk about Caleb Williams' performance tonight because
he was freaking Superman, but
I go back and forth between terrifying. Was this like an All-American performance, or was this one of those if anything else happens, he easily could have turned it over 4 times performance and SC loses this game. I think that that it's not insane to think that could have happened.
Yeah.
Given the throws that he was making across his body, just taking crazy risks, and almost all of them panned out, except for the interception he threw in the end zone, which was a terrible read, a terrible decision. That didn't work. Everything else he did worked out beautifully. Throwing across his body for the touchdown to Mario Williams. Beautiful. Never ever do that.
Yeah.
And he does it, and somehow everyone's just standing in the end zone. I don't think they expected the ball to go that way. And Mario Williams has a big buffer around him, it's like a bubble that allows him to catch the ball for the touchdown. We talked about the game at the play at the goal line where he does that jump pass, it was like a Madden glitch that someone tweeted out on Twitter. That easily could have been an interception or something. And the interception is the one that's in the third quarter. He needs to protect the ball a little bit more. But at the same time, if these are the things that are going to make him at the top of his game, then you got to let the guy ride.
Yeah.
We saw it with Sam Darnold. And we talked about at the time that when Sam Darnold is on and he's not committing turnovers, he's the best USC quarterback you've ever seen in your life. And when he's committing turnovers, it can be a problem. Caleb Williams does the same thing that Sam Darnold does, but I think he does it significantly better because he doesn't turn the ball over, and he's quicker on his feet, more nimble. He can get out of more sacks, able to do stuff on the ground, and that's why you see that he had 44 yards on the ground tonight, despite getting sacked at one point.
Yeah, well, and that's who he is, and that's the quarterback that he is, and he has a little bit of Patrick Mahomes in him, in that he defies the laws of quarterbacking. There's a lot of things that Patrick Mahomes does that you look at and say, don't do that. No, don't do that.
Yeah.
And
that's dangerous.
And it's dangerous, right. But when you're an athlete of Patrick Mahomes or Caleb Williams sort of status, then they can get away with it. And They're not always going to get away with it, but more often than not, he's going to get away with it, and you're going to reap the benefits from it. So you have to accept the downsides of it to a certain point. But this is where I want my head coach, like Lincoln Riley, to be prepared to reel him in if he goes too far, if it does start to be a detriment. And that was one of the things that I wanted to see a better adjustment against Oregon State was. It wasn't him taking crazy risks. It was just he was incredibly inaccurate in that game. Yeah. And I would have liked to see Lincoln Riley protect Caleb Williams from himself to a certain point. And that's something that we're going to have to see this season. We obviously didn't have to see it in this game, but if Caleb is out there, being too YOLO about everything and starting to hurt the team instead of help the team on a sort of the measure of the judgment there, then be able to reel him back in and say, no, okay, we're going to go a little more vanilla now. We're going to calm it down because I know you're incredibly talented, but like we need to get back to basics. And I think that's something that'll have to come when it comes.
Yeah.
I think this is also one of the conversations that we were seeing a lot on Twitter tonight is, could USC just run the ball a little bit more? Could USC just say, you know what, we're putting Caleb Williams in a situation where he has to go out there and be Superman, and that's not necessarily something that has to happen in this context. Yeah. Yes, Caleb Williams might just have to go be Superman against Utah. I would bet right now that USC needs a Heisman level performance, like a Heisman winning level performance from Caleb Williams to even have a chance of beating Utah under these circumstances. But in this game, I don't think you needed that from him against ASU. They're not that formidable in the long run. So maybe the answer would have been, let's give our offensive line a little bit more confidence by just running the ball a little bit more. Travis Dye gets 13 carries. There's 30 carries total, and 8 of them are Caleb Williams. So clearly the run game was not the focus in this game. I would have to go back and look, but I know you and I both saw a couple moments where it was like,
well, on the interception,
5 men in the box, just run it. Yeah, you called it.
I said it in the pre-snap. I'm like, look at how light the box is. Run the ball here, and he chooses to go with the pass, and it ultimately is him throwing in double, triple coverage. So
yeah, and that's one of the areas where
a long pass, no less a fade.
Where if the focus was just a little bit more on just saying, hey, let's just run the ball,
yeah,
you probably score there, and you take some pressure off your defense. And to the credit of the defense, after that interception, the defense absolutely shut down. They did not let ASU even get a sniff. So
yeah,
that was a really
the defense was great in the second half, bar none.
Yeah, that was a really good moment for the defense, but it was also, maybe a learning moment for the offense for the play caller and for everybody involved to just say, you know what, just do the simple thing and run and, let Travis Dye be Travis Dye.
Yeah. Well, we got a question in the chat from SJ. It says, is Caleb the ultimate YOLO quarterback? Before the game, I would have said no, because
he's no Matt Fink.
Well, that's fair. Before the game, I would have said no, because one of the things that I was really impressed with Caleb Williams about was his ability to be conservative when you need him to. A guy who's going to slide when you need him to slide. We saw in the Fresno State game, there was a bad snap, and he immediately just dove on the ball. Didn't try to pick it up and run for it and pull a Darnold or anything like that. And so I would have said no. In this game, it was like a completely different Caleb Williams, where it's like, I'm not going to go out of bounds. I'm going to spin and try to gain 2 more. I'm not going to slide. I'm going to juke and try to go for 4 more.
It's almost
I'm not going to just jump on this ball. I'm going to get it and spin and try to make something out of it. And he did. More power to him. Like, he did.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like he's like showing off for the Coliseum crowd. Like,
yeah,
maybe there. I mean, and this might be a thing.
I don't think that's what it is exactly, but
but like he might feed off of the crowd, like the home crowd, hearing that like, oh, and then being like, woo, I think that's entirely possible.
I was thinking this the other night that, SC hasn't turned the ball over. Is there a chance that this is a bad thing, in the sense of, not to make a soccer reference, but back in the aughts, Chelsea had a long unbeaten streak at home, right, at Stamford Bridge. All these people thought that, is this a detriment, like, because they would end up playing conservatively not to lose in games, just to keep that streak alive? And is that preventing them from going out and attacking and all these things? I'm not going to argue that point right now, but like, I think that there could be a world in which you're so concerned about not turning the ball over that you're not taking chances. And when you saw last week how errant of throws Caleb Williams was making, how timid he looked at sometimes, I think you could have made the argument that maybe that could come into play. But you watch the game tonight, and certainly that is not the case. SC's lack of turnovers is not because of taking a lack of chances.
Not for a lack of trying.
Certainly not for a lack of trying in this game. So,
yeah.
Everyone in the chat right now, there's a bunch of you. We appreciate it as always. Be sure to like the video and subscribe and join us here on Miniature Radio. But I also want you all to get involved and right now throw up a grade. How would you grade Caleb Williams' performance on Saturday night? Was he an A+ quarterback for you? Was he a B, a C? What would you do? And Alicia, what would be your grade for Caleb Williams?
I'd give him an A-. I would the minus just because that one really dumb decision to throw that pass in the end zone might be worse if ASU had gone down and scored after that because it would have been more meaningful. But I think that Caleb was a difference maker in this game. He really nullified a lot of what ASU's defense had the potential to do in this game. A quarterback not named Caleb Williams probably gets sacked, half a dozen times, probably loses his cool, probably gets flustered and things go really poorly for USC's offense and they don't put up 42 points. Like, I think that what we saw tonight from Caleb Williams was sort of what makes him special. Mm-hmm. So I think it was an A. 20 Batman in the chat says no Caleb, no win. That might be fair. That might be fair. I'm always hesitant to sort of put a win on any one player because you just don't know how the game would have gone. But like Miller Moss struggles in this game significantly more than Caleb Williams does, just by the very nature of Caleb being able to get away from that pressure and to not just avoid sacks, but to get first downs on sacks, on what would have been sacks, to get third down conversions on what would have been sacks. So was it a perfect performance by Caleb Williams? No, I think he has a higher ceiling even than what we saw tonight. But what we saw tonight is the thing that sets him apart, and that to me is an A- performance, just to highlight the interception.
Yeah, a bunch of similar comments in the chat right now. A plus, B, A minus, A minus, A minus, A minus, A minus, A, B, A minus, B minus, A minus, A minus. Yeah, it pretty much a consensus.
Yeah.
A minus performance for Caleb Williams. I think that's fine. I think you take that any day of the week. What you just want to see is continued improvement, and this was a huge improvement based off of his performance last week. Was not huge. Great, not up to snuff, and not only was he better in terms of the production when you look at him completing 27 of 37, 348 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he was more confident with the ball, surely. And he was more accurate. He was insanely accurate to the point where it allowed him to make those crazy decisions too. So absolutely, I think that he carried USC's offense and probably could have made better decisions along the way, but it worked out for SC. In the run game, kind of an interesting way to look at. They were so pass heavy.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious your thoughts on the run game in general. Travis Dye led the rushers, 13 carries, 62 yards, couple of touchdowns. Austin Jones, only 2 carries for 6 yards. This looks at this point like he is not going to be splitting carries with Dye anymore.
You know why that is?
What are you going to tell me?
No Blocky, no Rocky.
This is true.
His pass blocking hasn't been good enough. It's just straight up has not been good enough.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's also why we saw a lot of Raleek Brown early, and then we just sort of didn't see a lot of Raleek Brown anymore. And I didn't notice Raleek Brown specifically in the pass blocking situation, but Austin Jones just has had too many moments where he's just not on top of things in that regard. But Dye is all reliable Dye. Like you just know what you're going to get with him. He's going to sniff out every yard that he can get. And like I said earlier, I would have preferred to see more from him. Mm-hmm. I would have preferred the ball in his hands more often. I would have preferred to see how the offensive line would have responded if USC had just said, nope, this is going to be our running drive. We're just going to run it down their throat and be physical and see how they respond. That's one of the things that I really liked about Caleb's performance. We talked about last week is and there's still a question to be answered when USC goes back on the road, but it was a question of, is Caleb throwing this inaccurately because he's under pressure and he's losing his cool?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's now proven that under pressure he can keep his cool and be very accurate. The flip side of that question is he losing his cool on the road, which we can't know from this because it was at home. But like, from the offensive line perspective, I would have liked to have seen an answer from them too, in the sense of, we know they're having trouble with the pass blocking, but if you gave them that little juice, like that kneel-on nudge sort of situation where they can go out there and impose their will on a game, how would they respond? And it's entirely possible that USC could have run the ball on a drive and completely stalled out and not had it work. But I just would have rather seen what happened there if you had given them that chance.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Dye wasn't gashing the ASU defense like he was against Fresno State or like he was last week. Only averaged 4.8 yards per carry, but I think that if you commit to the run, I think it might open up more stuff in the pass potentially, and just allow things to get easier. Maybe make the pass rush less
Of a factor.
relentless and impactful, like you say. In the receiving game, Jordan Addison, great night from him. 8 catches, 105 yards. Mario Williams looked good. 5 catches, 50 yards. Brendan Rice, 3 catches, 72. He looked nice. Kyron Ware-Hudson with his first touchdown of his career, 3 catches, 46 yards. What do you think of the receivers?
I was so happy for Kyron Hudson. We've seen little flashes from him here and there. We've seen sort of the number 10 on the field and knowing that he's getting a shot, but this was really the game where it felt like he was coming into his own.
Mm-hmm.
Only 3 catches, 46 yards, but like those 3 catches were big catches. Caleb seemed to trust going to him. He seemed very reliable in terms of making himself a target and then catching the ball when it came his way. That's exciting for me to see, because USC does need to plan for the future a little bit here, not just the second half of the season where they will have to depend on the wide receivers sort of at a deeper rotation because trust has been earned, but also next year. Jordan Addison's going to be gone. Some of these guys are gonna graduate. Garrett Bryant Jr. is already redshirting, potentially transferring. Like, there will be sort of a shift in the receiver corps. So it's nice to see one of the younger guys step into a more featured role and sort of get his production. But this sort of receiving chart is pretty telling, because they spread the ball around quite a bit. I mean, yeah, Jordan Addison gets 8 catches for 105 yards. Absolutely, they did a much better
targets,
job of including him in the game. But like, the balance between Mario Williams getting 5, Brendan Rice getting 3, Hudson getting 3, Taj Washington getting 2, and a couple of those were third down catches that were just, he makes himself available in the middle of the field. Kyle Ford we saw a little bit more of, I think, from what I can remember. So, and Malcolm Epps getting a touchdown. The tight ends being involved there, with Lake McCree out for this game, presumably injured, but I haven't really heard anything in specific on that. So I did like the distribution in this game. I think you can work with the distribution in this game and know that you can sort of move the ball around and have reliable pass catchers coming from a bunch of different places. So only one drop, right? Only one drop. And
yeah, it was Addison credited with the drop.
And I did see guys getting open. Like, there was one play where Mario Williams was open and Caleb missed him. And
there was one play with where Addison has a great catch along the sideline that Mario Williams is open in the end zone, and he finds Addison along the sideline for that was the play right before the touchdown. It was right before right before the interception.
The interception, yeah.
Now that I think about it, what a crazy development.
Yeah.
If he finds Mario Williams on the post, maybe that takes away the interception. Who knows? I mean, if he scores. I think for me, my biggest issue with the passing game is just the lack of the ability to see the vertical game.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about it for a while now that SC is just not completing passes downfield. You look at it, SC had 18 gains of 15 plus yards in the passing game. Almost all of that were catch and runs. 27 yards to Mario Williams, caught at the ASU 45, advanced to the 22. So that's all yak yards. There's another one, caught at the 31 yards to Brendan Rice, caught at the USC 29, advanced to the USC 50. Yak yards, right? Like you see those up and down the big chunk play lists, and yak yards are great. Find your guys in space and allow them to run with the football. And there's no issue with those at all. I would just like to be able to see the long ball come through at some point. And we just haven't seen that for 3 weeks now.
You have to be able to set that up, though, and
for sure.
And you need an offensive line that's going to protect your quarterback long enough to not have him, scrambling away and then having to complete those passes. Like, he is Superman, but he's also not, God. So, I think that I was encouraged, though, because sort of the mid-range passing game was more effective in this game than it was against Oregon State.
Yeah.
Guys were getting open over the middle more effectively. Certainly Caleb was finding them more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
That all is sort of a step for improvement. But I think you have to earn those the vertical passing game, and I don't see USC earning it on multiple levels. So
yeah. Well, just like they need to do their due diligence a little bit more at the run game too, to open up some different areas, and maybe that ultimately leads to the vertical passing game as well. Let's flip things over and talk about the defense. What a tale of two halves it was. I'm pulling up the splits here. So first half, ASU had 218 total yards. They averaged 8.1 yards per play. 8.1. In the third quarter only, they averaged 1.3. Things just completely changed.
Flip the switch.
SC had 1 sack in the third quarter, 4 sacks in the fourth quarter. They were really ramping up the pressure. That was the difference. Early on in the first half of the game, I think Shane Lee really struggled at linebacker. Second half, you saw some personnel changes. You really saw more of an impact from guys like Corey Foreman off the edge. Eric Gentry had his moments throughout the game, particularly in the second half as well. What say you about this defense a little bit more than your first initial thoughts?
I think that clearly an adjustment was made at halftime, but I also think that the tackling got a little bit better at halftime too. The tackling in the first half was really bad. And it wasn't like great in the second half either, but the tackling was just very not good. ASU was getting a lot of extra yards because guys were taking terrible angles. Guys were sort of trying to tackle feet and arm tackle and all of that. It wasn't effective, obviously. But I liked what I saw from quite a few players. Eric Gentry is he's just so much fun. I really enjoy watching him play. I did want to highlight Tyrone Taleni, the transfer.
He got a sack tonight. Yeah,
got a sack. He actually had he was in on 2 sacks, so it was 1.5 sacks. I had not noticed number 31 in the first 4 games, and tonight I was like, oh, wait, who's 31? Had to look it up to double check. And then I saw him all over the place. Like, I just thought that he is sort of taking that Solomon Byrd kind of progression where it's more and more and more. You notice him, you see him, you appreciate him. And it's good to see guys like that continue to progress. And when people ask the question of like, will this defense get better? I don't know how much better this defense can get, but I do think that the introduction and the establishment and the trust gain from guys like Taleni, from like Byrd and even Corey Foreman will ultimately impact this defense for the better potentially. I thought the corners were good except for the pass interferences that I thought were bum raps for I get why they're called, but like they're called in the Pac-12, and so you have to live with them, but like they're not called most other conferences, so
the
it's
first one I thought should have been a hold, if anything.
Yeah.
There's one. I thought the camera angles tonight were terrible. This is one of the reasons why I'm frustrated with not being at games.
Yeah.
Is that you're subject to the camera angles? I thought the camera angles were too tight on all the passes. It's like it would scan with the passes, and you would scan, and you have no idea if the guy's open or not. We're just going to scan. This could be picked off or caught. Like you have no idea.
There's a fun element of mystery.
Yeah.
As they're panning over, and you're like, is there a receiver open? No, there's a defender there. Ooh, no, he's not going to pick it off. But like, ooh, like,
yeah,
it's every pass play is like a what are we going to find at the end of this camera pan?
Yeah, but even some of the replays were like that. And so on that first one, the first pass interference play, I was looking at the one on Jacoby Covington, and
that's right.
I thought that one could have been a hold because it looked like he was holding up the receiver while the guy was running his route before the pass was taken off. But we never get an actual legitimate replay at a distance where you can see anything form.
Yeah.
So at that angle, all we saw was what was a really ticky-tack PI call that shouldn't have been called, especially if you're going to let Mekhi Blackman get away with what he had the drive, before.
Well,
which was, no arm, no foul. If you're not going to call that, then don't call the other ones.
That's my thing is I just want the refs to be consistent.
Right.
And once they let the Mekhi Blackman go,
then the ASU one shouldn't have been called.
The ASU one should have been called, and then the other two on the next drive for USC shouldn't have been called. And just if you're gonna let the guys play, let the guys play. Like, but you need to establish very early on in the game that you aren't gonna let the guys play instead of like we're gonna go 3 quarters with letting the guys play, and then suddenly it's like no, you cannot make any sort of content or contact or try to deflect the ball coming your way. Like, it's just that's frustrating. What can you do? It's Pac-12 refs. We've lived through this nightmare before, and worse calls.
It's another reminder to people who complain about the penalties. Oh, SC's taking too many penalties. Oh, the blah blah blah. Oh my God, they're 113th in penalty yardage. Who gives a crap?
Everyone,
like we all talk about the Pac-12 refs being bad in that they call everything. And the things that are called in the Pac-12 are not penalties in the Big 12. They're not penalties in the ACC. They're not penalties in the SEC. So let's stop talking about the total number of penalties because it's not equal.
Most teams in the Pac-12 are in the bottom 50 of penalties.
I care about penalties in what they do to the game. How do they affect the game? They affected the game in this game by giving ASU a drive that was pretty much gifted. In terms of the yardage that they got, but it was on SC to hunker down at the end. They didn't hunker down at the end in the red zone. They gave up a touchdown there. You want that back. They got the interception at the end on the garbage time drive. At the end of the day, maybe that is even Steven and whatever, but what have you. The defense, I think, for the most part here, if you get more effort like the second half, I think you're going to feel very good about this defense in every game going forward. If you get more effort like you got in the second half, in the first half, then that's going to be a problem. But I'd rather have that order than the inverse, like I said earlier.
Yeah, I think the worry here is that you could end up giving up a lot more than 17 points in the first half if you play the way that USC's defense has played. And I think that the fact that so much of it comes down to, at least from my perception, poor tackling. You should be able to have that lockdown from the get-go. Just keeping your contain. Like, I think part of the thing that changes at halftime is just Alex Grinch gets to go in front of those guys and just say, keep your damn contain. Like, just do your, in the words of Tommy Rees, like, do your effing job. And just like, don't try to be out here being, superheroes. Leave that to Caleb Williams. Like, just do the job that's in front of you. And like, for whatever reason, they respond to that at halftime. And that might be, I don't know, maybe there's another reason why the things change so much at halftime. But like, it just feels like it's not like USC suddenly got bigger, stronger, faster. It's just that guys aren't.
There was significantly more pressure, though. And whether or not that was just a bunch of physical beats that came through in the second half or more blitzes. It didn't feel like it was more blitzes. There were blitzes that got to the quarterback, Emory Jones, in the second half. You saw with one of the sacks, what was it?
The two linebackers both got in.
Yeah, that was the one that Taleni got. I think that certainly helps the pass rush in that sense, but it goes beyond that because they weren't able to allow anything in the running game either. And whereas the first half, Emory Jones was looking like L. Roberson all of a sudden. And then every time an ASU running back had the ball, they were falling forward for 3-4 yards.
And there was a timidity too in the first half that I think was that was the prime example of that was the touchdown that Emory Jones scores rushing.
Mm-hmm.
And Jalen Smith just sort of stands there and like waits for him to come to the line. Like it's like he's waiting for him to meet him at the goal line when Jalen Smith should just be running full bore to just take out Emory Jones. Like
right.
Emory Jones is not Caleb Williams. Emory Jones is not, Lamar Jackson or something like that, where if you come in too hot, he's going to juke you and make you look like an idiot. Like that's not Emory Jones. So you need to just come in hot and see if you can, number one, stop him short. Number two, dislodge the ball, do whatever you can. And I think that there was a timidity to Jalen Smith in that play. Timidity. That's how timidity. I don't know how to say it. Timidity. Yeah.
I've never heard you say that word in my life.
Well, it's coming amazing to mind today, and it's just a thing. So thank God the soundboard's not here because it would already be on it.
It certainly will be.
Yeah.
And you can go hear it over at the What's Bruin show. I'm sure Jake will clip it at this point.
Oh, but that was part of the poor tackling that I think we saw in the first half too, is guys were just not bringing that kind of aggression and that, or maybe they were being over aggressive, whatever it was. They weren't on top of things. They weren't getting to the man. They were sort of not trying to hit and tackle the man down. It was sort of like, two-hand touch a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Malcolm in the chat says scared of contact. Yeah, they just sort of felt like a few times like dudes were scared of contact or not willing to just be physical. And that's one of the weird things too, is that I am watching more college football throughout the day because I'm covering college football throughout the day. And you sort of see which teams are out there relishing contact. And I do feel for it because you are playing in front of Pac-12 refs and they might eject you. They might throw a flag. They might do anything for touching a quarterback. You do have to walk a line as a defender. I get it. It's tough. But at your core, you need to be out there with physicality being your number one thing. And I just didn't, it felt like USC was lacking that physicality in the first half. And they clearly corrected that in the second half for me.
Dardar2307 says timidness?
Timidness, yes. But I like timidity better.
Timidity.
Timidity.
Okay. Anyways, be sure to pop in with questions in here. We'll go through, open up questions in just a second. Before we do so, I want to run through the other Pac-12 scores really quick. Oregon putting a hurting on Stanford, 45-27. That game not as close as the score indicates. Oregon was up huge, and Stanford scored a little bit in garbage time. Utah, as we talked about earlier, big winners over Oregon State, 42-16. Wazoo, USC's opponent next week, with a big win at home, 28-9 over Cal. Kept Cal out of the end zone. Unless, was that last one? 6 points by Cal in the fourth quarter? Was that 2 field goals? Or was it a touchdown?
I did not watch that game. So
now I have to click on this and figure whatever it was. 9 points by Cal.
If you told me that Cal didn't get in the end zone, I wouldn't think you were lying. So
fair enough.
That's just
Arizona 43-20 over the corpse that is Colorado. And then Friday night, big exciting game over at the Rose Bowl. UCLA getting a win 40-32 to stay undefeated. It really does feel like there's it's a wide open race in the Pac-12, and there's like 5 teams who could legitimately take it. ESPN had a graphic of those 5 teams, and I think it feels right. It's SC, it's Oregon, it's Utah, it's Washington, it's UCLA, but I think you can include Wazoo on there.
Mm-hmm.
You have mentioned multiple times tonight earlier on the Carcast that if SC does this, they'll lose to Utah. If SC does this, they'll lose to Utah. Why are we not taking Washington State more seriously? If it wasn't for like a bad 10 minutes against Oregon, they're undefeated right now. And they're probably ranked 13 instead of the Ducks.
Oh, I don't intend to take Washington State not seriously. I just think that Utah, we know a little bit more about what this Utah team is in terms of the physicality they'll bring, how they'll play at Rice Eccles, all that kind of stuff. So I don't think it's like overlooking Washington State. It's just I know more about Utah to be able to say for sure that that's going to be an issue. But I do want to say that like people are talking about Utah being scared of Utah. If you watch that game on Friday night, don't think you shouldn't be scared about UCLA as well, because if DTR is on, I told my Liverpool buddy who's a UCLA fan, like when DTR is on his stuff, like he is a scary quarterback. DTR was feeling it against Washington. DTR was strutting around, just had a little bit of that Caleb Williams like Superman vibe to him in that game. You could tell he was feeling it. If he's feeling it against this USC defense, that'll be an interesting game.
Yeah, Kyle in the chat says, really looking forward to Utah UCLA next week, which should provide a great barometer for both teams.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
That feels to me like a game day game. I get why they're going to Lawrence, Kansas for TCU, and that'll be fun. TCU, of course. F's in the chat for Oklahoma. And the Brett Venables defense giving up 55 points for the first time since little Methodist school called University of Southern California put 55 on Oklahoma back in 2005. You ever heard of that one?
Yeah. That was fun, certainly.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the mail. Let's open up the mailbag. We've got a bunch of questions in here from you guys joining us here on YouTube, and as always, add more questions in here. You can put the word question over at the beginning. That helps us find them and tag them for us to be able to go back to them. Ron Campbell says, Pac-12 officials year in and year out are terrible. Why can't they ever improve? You want my honest take? I think all refs in general have a really difficult job. The difference in the Pac-12 is that they call things to the book way more than anyone else does. And because of that, by comparison, we think that they're worse. I think they just interpret things a little more strenuously than strenuously.
Just
look at me creating words tonight too. Their interpretation of the rule book is just way more literal than any other conference, and that's why we think that they're the worst. In reality, all refs are bad because it's a very hard job. They're not moving at the speed that the game is.
Yes, I agree. If you talk to Big 12 fans, they say their ref suck. Talk to SEC fans, they say their ref sucks. ACC, Big 10, their ref sucks. NBA, NFL, MLB, MLS, Premier League, literally every sport, everyone's referees and officials suck. F1 officials suck. Part of that too is just because, like you said, it's a hard job. I think part of it with the Pac-12 is that the conference, as you say, lets them call it more stringently.
Shout out to Jeff and
yes,
the Jeff from Denmark, by the way. I think
that
it might be.
Yeah.
But
I think
good morning if so.
I think the Pac-12 refs sort of get highlighted as extra bad because they are trying to call it more by the book, and that thus makes their calls that much more ridiculous because they don't let guys play. And the more you let guys play, the more likely you are to not get on the wrong side of like, oh, this ref. There's also a lot of incompetence sometimes with the sort of the management of the rules and the referees and all that kind of stuff. Like there are structural issues that are certainly contributing to the Pac-12 refs being among the worst. But the Pac-12 refs could be 50% better than they are, and they would still suck. Like, that's the reality.
Yeah. DMG for USC says, going forward, will the defense get better as the season progresses? I don't see why we shouldn't believe that when we see that in games they have gotten better as the games have progressed. Look at last week against Oregon State. There were times early on where you're like, they're giving up a lot of yards. But really, when the game got tighter and tighter and tighter as the game got on, they got even better and better, and they started making more third down stops as the game went on too. So they've gotten better in literally every game as the game has gone on. All 5 of them, they've gotten better in all 5. Am I wrong about that?
Certainly, as the game has gone on, their second halves have been significantly better than the first halves.
Yeah, in all 5, yeah.
Yeah. One element is how healthy can they stay, because a couple of poorly timed injuries here could really, really hurt this defense. So you have to take health and availability into factor. But other than that, and also just facing better teams, better quarterbacks. I think Cam Rising could be a problem for this team. DTR we already talked about. That'll also have an impact here. But yeah, the more time they get under the scheme, the more time they get familiarizing each other with each other, all that kind of stuff, you would expect them to get better as the season goes on. As I was getting to earlier, there are levels to better. So when we say better, I'm talking marginally better, but this is still, in my opinion, gonna be a 25 to 20 point defense.
Yeah.
And that'll be scary sometimes, but that's the reality.
You expect to score more than that on offense.
Yeah.
Dave S. says ASU had over 100 yards rushing the first half. In the second half, they had negative 13. Huge adjustment. Defense definitely got stops. Yeah, absolutely. You look at the at the splits, and it's wild how much things slowed down for ASU. USC defensively just completely flipped a switch. John says, what happened to Dedich?
He was dealing with injury last week. It sounds like that injury caught up to him this week, and so he did not play.
Yeah, and Dave from Orange County says, what's the deal with the shaky O-line play? We've heard so much about the O-line being solid, but without Caleb, we'd be in big, big trouble. Yeah, like we talked about earlier, this has come from out of nowhere because it was a strength for SC last year. Their best unit on offense last year was the offensive line. You can make an argument that the first 2 games, I don't know, I don't remember the offensive line being an issue in the first 2 games, but certainly in the last 3 has been an issue. Is that just because of the injury stuff with Ford and Haskins? Maybe. Tonight it was Ford and Haskins both playing in addition to the injury stuff with Dedich. I mean, maybe that plays a role either way. They just, no matter who's in there, they got to find a way to get better. And USC, in terms of play calling, Lincoln Riley needs to find a way to offset those things. If you can't trust your offensive line to protect and pass pro, then throw more screens.
Yeah.
We talk about how Raleek Brown can be a weapon in the passing game and Travis Dye too. Well, get them in the passing game a little bit more then. Find some different avenue and run the ball maybe a little bit more. So Poncho Cam says, what's with our Jekyll and Hyde defense? Yeah, tale of 2 halves, right?
I wish I could tell you why the first. I mean, I've already gotten at some of the core reasons why I think that the difference between the first half and the second half. I wish I could tell you why that is the case. Like, why is it that USC's defense comes out and doesn't seem like they're ready to go in the first half? I don't know. I hope the coaches can figure that out, because it would be nice if they put together 4 quarters.
Yeah. By the way, DMG for USC is Dave the Greater.
Yeah, hi Dave.
Formerly Utah Dave. Welcome back to California. Can we call it California Dave? I like California Dave.
California Dave.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then we got to hit the button for our buddy Jake's soundboard. California. Yeah. We're not in key there.
No, I cannot sing. Welcome to that reality.
Wizard of Ilium, Austin Jones gave up a sack and then never came back. No blocky, no Rocky, or is he hurt? You talked about it earlier about the no blocky, no rocky thing. I think that's a big element of that.
Yeah, I unless we hear something to say that he was hurt, I just have to assume that it was he wasn't getting the job done in pass pro.
Yeah.
And that is always a reason why running backs are benched.
Yeah. Best friend of the show, Kenny Martin. ASU is not good. ASU being Kenny's alma mater, of course. Neither is Mizzou, yet the good teams ultimately made the right thing happen and got the wins. Georgia down early, 10-0 to Mizzou and fought back and got the win. Did not expect that. We've talked about how there's a separation at the top in college football with Georgia seemingly being in another world along with Ohio State and Alabama. And Ohio State and Alabama both in dogfights at different parts of their games, but got the win on the road, both of them.
See, and I wanted to highlight that comment just because that's the reality of college football.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree that Georgia is a significantly better team from top to bottom than USC, and yet they too are struggling with a team like Mizzou, which Mizzou is not significantly better than ASU. They might be in better position, not having be coachless and all that kind of stuff, but they're not like head and shoulders above ASU where ASU is, and yet Mizzou gave Georgia a game. Mizzou really made it difficult for that team to do anything. Sometimes you're going to have those kind of nights and you're not going to be perfect. And you have to look at the sort of evaluate a team on a week by week basis with that understanding, because then then things won't be the sky is falling every time that your team doesn't, win 70-0, which would have been great if USC had won 70-0 tonight, but I can't will that to happen.
Not like I ever sort of predicted that at some point. No, and I go back to winning on the road is hard. It's hard. Yeah. I think there's a reason why coaches talk about it. There's a reason why Lincoln Riley says that road wins are gold. In the Pac-12 this week, there were 6 games. The home team won all 6. Mm-hmm. Winning on the road is difficult, and it's not a surprise that Georgia's issue would be in a game in which was on the road.
Yeah.
That's why I think when you play ranked teams on the road, and there was a stat for the longest time that Franklin over at Penn State,
James
Franklin was like, he's like 2-10 against ranked teams on the road all time. Yeah, go look at every college football coach against ranked opponents on the road. All of their records are like 2-10.
And it doesn't have to be particularly raucous places like, Kinnick, where Iowa is very difficult to beat, or Autzen. Washington went on the road to the Rose Bowl, which is not exactly the most difficult venue to play in as far as crowd noise and all that kind of stuff and hostility.
Yeah.
But they clearly were not at their best, and partly that was UCLA making them look like that way. Partly it was their first road game of the year, and
on short rest.
Yeah. Sometimes that'll get to you. So,
yeah. Ishmael says, "What can the special teams do to improve on field position?" Okay, I'm gonna I got an answer for this. It's very simple.
I wonder if your answer is the same as mine.
Okay, let's see if we can channel some energy here and give the same answer. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if we can maybe say it together.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Don't
fair catch.
Get the penalties. Oh, we're different.
Oh, I mean, those are 2 different things then.
I mean, yes, fair. I would agree.
You
but
want
also,
to improve field position? Fair catch the ball on kickoffs. It's been legal since 2017. Every other team in college football does it. Is it anticlimactic and lame to watch? Yes. Does it get you the ball at the 25-yard line? Yes. Does it prevent a chance in which you return the ball to the 12 and then also have a block in the back somehow within those 12 yards and then have to start the ball at your drive at the 6? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We're on the same page. All
you have to do is just go like this with your arms.
Yeah. Or even not. If you watch the TCU Oklahoma game, you don't even apparently need to do this with your arms. Some refs will assume that you called a fair catch.
Yeah,
but no, just fair catch it. Yeah.
USC special teams are. SC's lucky that they're 5-0 because if they weren't, and if there was a special teams coach, and if Lincoln Riley was Clay Helton, that special teams coach's head would be on a stake. Because look at how much people loathed John Baxter, and you look back at the 2018 Texas game and how he got fired after that, and all the stuff. Like, and then I look to what they're doing right now. Like, yes, they haven't given up a touchdown yet or anything like that, but it's constantly where like every return is going to the 30 and against them, and every return for them is going to like the 17 at best. It's not great for field position.
No.
And then the onside kick.
Special team sucks for most people across the
No,
country.
it does. I agree, and that's why like I'd rather coach up another position than special teams for sure. And when you have an offense that's this good, maybe you just sacrifice those 12 yards per drive because you can have the faith in picking it up no matter what.
Yes, but they're like, so kickoff coverage.
That's all the more reason to just fair catch it.
That's what kickoff coverage is one thing. But yeah, like if you're not going to put a lot of time and effort in special teams, then just keep it simple, stupid. Like just say, okay, you will not return this. Just fair catch every time. We're not going to deal with it. Like, I know you want to make an impact, guys, but also like, please don't return this to the 12-yard line. Or basically, if you do not get to the 25-yard line when you take a return, when you have a return in your hand, if you do not get to the 25-yard line, you do not do the kick return next time.
Okay, Mom.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Lay down the law.
To be fair, I like that name. To be fair, was Cortland Ford playing a bit injured still? He struggled some in the first half. I would reason to guess that he wouldn't be out there if he was still injured, especially given how they didn't play him last week, even though he was suited up last week.
But there are also degrees to injury, so you can still feel the effects of whatever is
maybe a lack of
ailing
confidence
you.
on that injury.
Yeah, I think that might be a thing too. Maybe some rust because he had been out for a couple times, so a couple games. So yeah, I don't know. Also, left tackle was going to be USC's weakest position on the line anyways this year, so I don't know. It's so hard to tell. It's so hard to evaluate just because we haven't. That has been the position that has been shuffled the most. That has been the position that has been hit most heavily by injury. Like it's hard to say if that's they're not healthy or like maybe they're just limited.
Yeah, I either way, no matter what it is, you need to see improvement next week for the Cougs, and certainly the week after as well when SC goes on the road to Rice Eccles in 2 weeks. Randy says, question, Arizona State and Fresno and Stanford have a combined 3 wins. Rice and Oregon State haven't had and it cuts off. I missed what the other part was.
Well, Fresno lost to UConn today.
Did they?
Yeah. So that's not ideal.
Looking it up, Rice is 3-2. Oregon State is 3-2 with losses to SC and Utah. I don't think there's any shame in that.
No, there's no shame in that. I mean, Oregon State certainly didn't want to lose to Utah the way that they lost to Utah. But when you have 4 turnovers, 4 interceptions, like, that's just that's what's going to happen. But no, I think the Fresno State loss is the really bad one.
Yeah,
I don't know. Okay.
I have too much faith in Jeff Tedford to write Fresno State off. It's just,
but also, like, I feel like you can put a lot of sort of emphasis on resumes and all this kind of stuff, and they're figuring out did the teams that USC play have any meaning or anything like that? Like, I already don't think this team is a playoff team. So, like, for me, I don't really, like, this team is going to play whoever's in front of them each week. And we're going to find out how they do against the team that's in front of them each week. So, looking back on, like, whether or not Oregon State was as good as we thought they were, Fresno State was as good as we thought they were, Stanford or Rice were as bad as we thought they were, or anything like that. Like, I think it's an interesting thing to do, but also USC won the games. Like, that's the thing that I'm paying attention to.
So I just looked this up. Do you know what team in the SEC has the most losses of any SEC team?
This year,
Yes,
Florida,
Mizzou. The ones
Mizzou.
who almost beat
the
Georgia.
ones who almost beat Georgia. Yeah.
No, so I was looking up the Pac-12 standings, and of course it's a four-way tie of teams who have yet to lose in the conference: SC, UCLA, Oregon, and Utah. And you talk about that this is a flawed SC team, but I think any team beyond the top three are flawed. So that's no indictment, I think, especially in year one. But you add in the thought of SC is not going to play Oregon this year. They're not going to play Washington. They don't play UCLA until the end of the season, and so there's a lot that can change between now and then. They do get Utah. It's on the road in a couple of weeks. This schedule is not nearly as hard as it could be if they did play Oregon and Washington and swap those out for Oregon State and Washington State and flip those. I think that you're making each one of those more difficult than they were. In a year one situation where we talked about at the beginning that this is all about the eye test and shouldn't necessarily be about wins and losses because you want SC to show that they've improved in year one, and we don't expect them to be a playoff team in year one anyways. And so it's about the eye test, eye test, eye test. Do you wish that the schedule was different and SC would play Oregon and Washington this year strictly to be able to look at it and see how far that they've come and they can measure up against those teams?
No, because I think you measure up. If you measure up against Utah and UCLA and Washington State and Notre Dame, then like if those aren't enough of a measuring stick, then you go to the Pac-12 title game and then you measure up against whoever is in that game.
You get there. Assuming that you get there.
Yeah. And who are we to say? Is Washington State an easier beat than Washington? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all hard to say. Malcolm in the chat says that he thinks that the thing that was not finished was that Oregon State, Fresno State, and Rice don't have a Power 5 win.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Oregon State, even though they don't have a Power 5 win and they're 3-2,
It's tough when the Power 5 teams you've played are USC and
Utah.
Yeah. But this is also why like resume evaluation is so flawed when you're doing it after 4 or 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
When we might have thought that the teams got credit for beating Florida and for beating Texas A&M when it turns out that those teams are not any good. Right. And then all of that. So the real resume evaluation comes at the end of the season when you actually know, okay, how many games did Oregon State win? How many games did Fresno State win? And people are right to point out that Fresno State is starting a backup quarterback because Jake Haener got injured against USC. So like, can you even judge for Fresno State as a team when Jake Haener is not the quarterback that's been playing these last 2 weeks? Like there's so many factors that go into this.
But do we actually know that Florida's not good? They're 2-2, and their two wins, the 2 losses were to teams that are ranked in the top 10.
Well, and this is where Baylor can come out and say Baylor's 2 losses are to BYU on the road and to Oklahoma State
at home. Yeah,
again, they have 2 losses.
But this is why I think that records are overrated.
Yes, records are overrated. Resumes are over and underrated. Because we don't have all the picture.
Right.
The rankings that matter are at the end of the season. The evaluations that matter are at the end of the season, which is why I'm sort of looking at each game. You can only play the game that's in front of you, so play the game that's in front of you. And
look at 2012 USC, right? You talk about, they go 7-6, and it's an embarrassment, and Lane Kiffin should have got fired, and blah, 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 blah. Going into November, SC was 6-2 and very much in contention to win the Pac-12 South and go finally play Oregon for a Pac-12 championship game.
And then things fell apart because things fall apart in seasons and things come together in seasons. And, one season to the next, one team to the next. There's so many variables that happen.
2018, the terrible 5-7 USC season. SC controlled their own destiny until like 2 weeks left in the season.
Yeah,
You
which
know what I
was
mean? Like,
kind of a reflection of just the Pac-12 being what the
yes.
Pac-12 is.
Sorry, I'm not allowed to say control their own destiny on the podcast anymore. Yeah. All right. More questions. Mike Gillespie it says, how are we feeling about Relique Brown? I think he needs to be RB2. Love whenever he's out there. I think he is becoming RB2 because we saw that with the load tonight. I think that he got significantly more run than Aaron Jones. Austin Jones.
Yeah. Aaron Jones. Yeah.
Different running back. Yeah. Austin Jones.
I was really encouraged by a couple of Relique's runs today. I was also sort of thinking to myself, well, yeah, that's the freshman trying to sort of string this out to get the big chunk play instead of just taking what was there for him. So he's still sort of working through that. I would like to know why we didn't see more of him later, but at the same time, it's not like I need to see less of Travis Dye. So
this game never felt in doubt for SC. Certainly not in the second half. But at the same time, I don't think the lead was so sizable because of that, because of the interception, and then because of the ASU drive that they had with the penalties and all that stuff. I could see why you kept Dye in there more.
Yeah.
So yeah. I get it. Alicia, you got a question. You want to read it to you?
I got a question.
It was for you.
Hold on. Oh, Alicia, question from
yeah, exactly. I can't pronounce it. I'm letting you do it.
Thylacine.
Sure.
Thylacine. You said you wanted to see USC not rely on turnovers and just get stops on defense. Any thoughts about what you saw tonight? Yeah, in the second half, I thought that the response from the defense, in the second half and also, particularly after that Caleb Williams interception, I really liked what I saw. In the first half, it's a totally different story because what happened in the first half is exactly why people have some anxiety about this defense, because if they're not getting those turnovers, they're giving up those points. And they did get the one field goal stop, which was, I thought ultimately a good outcome for that drive. But the ease with which they gave up the touchdowns to allow the first half to become this sort of back and forth that it was, that's where you are vulnerable. So I definitely need to see more of that in the first half. To their credit, in the second half, they definitely get those stops, even when they're not generating the turnovers. They got the turnover for this game in the end, but it's almost like the sort of just like ticking a box fluke. Like it wasn't part of the main chunk of the game where the game was won and lost. And the defense was able to get that job done ultimately in the segment of the game where it was won and lost.
I'm looking at the stats because I thought for sure that I was going to bring up the third down conversions. ASU was 50% on third downs in the fourth quarter, 4 of 8. I don't remember that. Don't feel like that was what I watched. They had 10 first downs in the fourth quarter.
Well, wasn't one of those drives the one where they got
with all the penalties. Yes, all the penalties, and I think that's a big. I think most
of those came on third down. So
yeah, I know. It's just I don't know. But then again, SC only had 2 penalties in the fourth. I don't know. It's weird. I thought. Then one of it was that last drive with the Kellen Bullock interception.
Yeah, the last drive
was sort of garbage timing.
Yeah.
But either way, I to go back to the question. I think that's a great point. I wanted to see what the defense would be like, not having to rely on turnovers. And I think the answer was when they needed to get stops, they got stops that way, as just getting off the field. And I'll take that, certainly. Yeah. Remo Murdy says, if 5-0 with what you've seen might happen, where are your win totals now? Still at 9 or 10 wins?
Yeah, I'm sticking with 10-2. I think there are two losses down the line. I think Utah and something else. There could even be 3 losses down the line if things, if the defense has that off game where the offense isn't able to counterbalance. I think that could come against UCLA, could come against Notre Dame. Notre Dame has a pretty decent defense, so even though their offense is not particularly great, USC's defense could have a bad day, and that defense on the other side could limit USC's offense just enough. Washington State, certainly a team that we could look at it, and we'll know when we do the preview, but could certainly be a game where USC trips. I think USC can legitimately lose to Utah and then trip at least one more time and potentially even 2 times, and that wouldn't be all that surprising given everything that we primed the season for, given first season, flawed team, limited depth, all that kind of stuff. So I'm sticking with 10-2. I feel comfortable with 10-2, and that's not going to change at this point.
Yeah, I said 9-3 early on, but my 2 of my 3 losses were Stanford and Oregon State. I thought SC would get better as the year has gone on. And I still think that should bear out that SC gets better as we've gone on. I think of the 5 games, the last 2 have kind of been the one where I think you can kind of point to some frustrations, albeit I think a lot of that is the Oregon State game being so close and SC having to pull it out in the miraculous way that they did. And in this game, like I said, that penalty drive doesn't happen. Caleb Williams doesn't throw the interception. Suddenly it's 49-17 and you're in this game and everyone's voting love it in the poll instead of meh. And those are the same plays basically playing out at that time too. But you can't change things like that. The game plays out the way it does for a reason. And SC made changes in this game and got better as the game went on defensively. You hope that you can continue to do that going forward. And if Grinch is gonna be a great adjustments guy or a great game plan guy, you hope it's the one that wins. And right now, adjustments are the ones that are winning games. And you want to continue to see that for sure. Mm-hmm. We got a question from SJ, and I think this is going to be our last question before we wrap this thing up, since it's off topic, unless people want to also file in some off topic questions here at the end. If you 2 place other pieces of lasagna side by side and they are touching, you can kind of see if they maybe make one piece. Why not if they are stacked? I reluctantly see Michael's point.
No, because if I take 2 pieces of lasagna and put them side to side, there is a cut between those 2 pieces of lasagna, thus making them 2 pieces of lasagna. We're referring still to 2 pieces of lasagna that are stuck together, but it's pretty clear when a lasagna has been cut, you know it has been cut. Like there's a line there. So yes, 2 lasagnas that are put next to each other are 2 lasagnas, just like 2 lasagnas that are stacked on top of each other are 2 lasagnas. That's just the fact of the matter.
All I read from that is I see Michael's point. That's all I read.
Nope.
Everyone, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, like everybody in the chat right now is going, yes, Michael is right.
That is absolutely exactly not what's going on.
Oh my God, there's like 18 messages right now. Michael is right about lasagna.
That's not.
And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, also leave us a review to help grow the show. And then go over to
let
YouTube
us know in your review how you feel about the great lasagna debate of 2022.
Yeah.
Which is funny because we have had a lasagna in the freezer since
we were going to cook it the other night.
The night that we had the first lasagna debate, we were going to cook the lasagna. The thing about lasagna, frozen lasagna, is it just takes a long time to cook. So like we talk about how we're going to have lasagna, and then we like I'm
waiting for someone to be like, frozen lasagna, you don't just make lasagna.
Stouffer's lasagna is perfectly fine. Like it's perfectly acceptable. But if you don't think to yourself, oh, it's like 4:30 or 5, I need to put the lasagna in to heat up, then you've already lost your window to say we're going to have lasagna for dinner tonight. So that's our issue, is that like we're not proactive enough. So one of these days we're going to cook the lasagna, and then I'm going to take a picture of the 2 lasagnas stacked on top of each other and to prove that we did it, but not yet.
Yeah. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us here on this Carcast for USC's 42-25 win over ASU. Jeff from Copenhagen says, I know Michael is totally looking forward to Thanksgiving food.
Well, I know I am.
Because Thanksgiving is garbage. Also, where we're going to Thanksgiving this year, there will not be turkey served. So that makes me happy. It's going to be prime rib.
Wait, I didn't know that was part of the deal.
Yeah, it's going to be prime rib.
Well, I love prime rib, so that's fine.
Prime rib or brisket, maybe.
I will have to have my turkey fix from elsewhere then.
Yeah. You can go to
Yeah. Kyle in the chat says anyone who hates Halloween can never be right. That's correct, Kyle.
Halloween sucks.
Correct.
As the Gen Zs would say, it's mid.
JY in the chat says Costco Kirkland signature Italian sausage lasagna is underrated. Number one, JY. I love that you gave the entire name of the Costco Kirkland signature Italian sausage lasagna. A plus. Number two, I have never had it. Maybe that's what we need to go. We need to go to Costco and pick up their lasagna.
Did they have one without Italian sausage?
The Costco Kirkland signature Italian sausage lasagna. Well, we can go find out if they have Costco Kirkland signature 4 cheese lasagna or something like that.
This show is not brought to you by Costco Kirkland signature, by the way. Costco Kirkland signature does sound funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I loved it. So yeah.
I love the Costco Kirkland signature mac and cheese. It's good too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big fan.
I'm a big fan of the Costco Kirkland signature roasted chickens. So
yeah. Did you see that TikTok this week?
The one where the guy is watching them take yes. Yes, I did see that TikTok.
It's amazing. Dave the Greater says their first Thanksgiving as a married couple. Oh. Yeah.
JW says they have a beef version as well. Would you eat the Costco Kirkland signature beef lasagna?
I could do it.
Because
tonight I learned the difference between gravy and sauce in the Italian sense.
Yeah.
Gravy includes meat. I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah, the gravy is a meat sauce and the sauce is just like the marinara sauce. Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
Next week we'll have a review of Costco Kirkland signature beef lasagna for all of you.
All right, I'm looking at the live watchers and it's going down.
Yeah, we've lost. Hey, I was impressed that we were above 200 at 12:30 p.m. a.m. Pacific time.
Yes.
Shout outs to all. We did lose some folks early. Shout outs if you guys come back. I know I saw Graham in here.
Big congrats, by the way, to Graham. He's going to the NHL. Work as a NHL job.
Oh yeah, that's
with
legit.
The Caps.
Legit. Congratulations. I don't know if I saw Judy Madden in here or not, but I know that she's also a loyal listener and watcher on the East Coast or the Eastern Time Zone. So shout out to all of our East Coast Time Zone people who started the episode and then fell asleep and then are now re-listening to it on Sunday or Monday or whenever you do. Shout out to you. We appreciate you. Shout out to all of the other time zone people who are still here at 12:30 a.m. Pacific.
There's one more shout out that we could do from one of our great friends of the pod, former co-host, by the way, who had a big deal over the weekend. But I don't know are we publicly allowed to say anything?
Oh,
I don't know.
Yeah, has there been a social media announcement? If there's no social media announcement, then we don't get to say it.
I don't know. But you should probably go to look up Trinice Ferreira on
go check
on Twitter and just
check Trinice's Twitter or
send her a happy face
or Instagram or something. Yeah. We'll see if you know what we're talking about.
All right. Dave the Greater says, love you guys. See ya. We love you as well. And we will see you guys next time. And as always, be sure to subscribe and join us Monday night when we look back at the ASU game, open up the mailbag, and so much more. We couldn't do this thing without you. We've now eclipsed the 1,000 subscribers mark on YouTube. Seriously, it is awesome. All. 99,000 more until we get our play button. That's just my life goal. So that's all we got to do. 99,000 more of you. So
hey, we hit that threshold way faster than I expected when we started this YouTube journey the end of the summer. So shout out to all of our subscribers on YouTube and all of our podcast listeners and everyone who is listening to us through other means.
Yeah.
We love you all.
Yeah. All right. Yes. It's 12:30. We got to get some rest before the Singapore Grand Prix, the F1 night race.
Yes.
Even though it's going to be 5 a.m. for us. So, all right.
Yeah.
Until then, see ya.
See ya.
See ya.